Hey everybody, KMO here, back at the cemetery on the edge of it. It's a steep uphill climb to get here, which is one reason for me to come up here. Haven't done much today. Played a lot of Plants vs. Zombies Heroes. I deleted Plants vs. Zombies 2 from my tablet because it was taking up too much of my time. I got a different game in the same franchise to eat up my time. But I've also been listening to the audiobook of Aurora by Kim Stanley Robinson. I really enjoy the novels of Kim Stanley Robinson, although I have not read his most famous trilogy, the Mars trilogy. Red Mars, Blue Mars, and Green Mars. But I have read, The Years of Rice and Salt, Shaman, one of his California trilogies, Pacific's Edge, I think it is. Which is a utopian novel, which is fun. You know, we get a lot of dystopian novels these days, not so many utopias. Aurora is about a generational spaceship, an interstellar ship, colony ship going to Tau Ceti. And the story picks up just before they're about to arrive. They've been braking for a while. And the main character is 14 years old. And she's kind of a genetic throwback in that the colonists, or the first generation of people that set out, you know, and this is 170 years into the journey or something like that. The first generation of volunteers were, the cream of the crop, handpicked people for their skills, their physical abilities, their mental abilities. And this young girl is kind of slow on the uptake, although she's taller than anybody else. Everybody on the ship is short. Try to say that without your front teeth. Everybody on the ship is short. Anyway, everybody on the ship was short. So I'm not going to recount the entire plot other than to say it is replete with details, nuances, scientific nuances. The main character's mother, who is unofficially the ship's engineer, I don't know what her exact job title is, but basically the ship has had troubles that nobody really knows how to deal with, and this very brilliant woman, who is the mother of the not so smart girl, has had, she's just been instrumental in keeping the whole thing going. And she has been trying to get a computer on the ship to tell the story of the history of the journey in narrative form, and the ship, the computer doesn't get it. Doesn't understand how to do this. So she keeps feeding it, information about linguistics and about, communication theory and all manner of stuff that I can't just rattle off, from memory. Over years, trying to get the ship to understand how to tell a story. And ultimately it becomes clear, and this isn't any sort of spoiler, this is in the first act, that it becomes clear that the book that you're reading, or in my case listening to, is, the narrator is the ship. The ship's AI, which is a coalescence of multiple systems. It calls itself we. It's telling the story. And, it's following the directions of the person who told it to tell the story. And in learning how to tell the story, basically it wakes up. When the ship sets out, there is no AGI. And, by the time the story comes to its climax, AGI exists. But the people on the ship are having all these problems because while it's an enormous ship, it's got 12 different biomes, 12 different climate and geographical regions with the, appropriate flora and fauna in it, as well as humans. It's still a very small, self-contained system. And they're having, all these problems that largely result from, one, lack of certain basic elements like phosphorus. That the people who designed the mission knew that phosphorus was necessary, they just didn't realize how much. And there's another crucial element that's missing, which would be a bit of a spoiler. That comes late in the story. And I haven't finished it yet. I think I'm in the third and final act, but I haven't really checked to see where I am. I'm just judging on story structure. I think I'm near the end. But one of the main problems that they're facing is that bacteria and other microorganisms, they reproduce much faster than mammals and, plants and large, macroorganisms. And so they evolve more quickly. And in a sense, we are in this evolutionary contest with the microbiota that define our environments. I mean, our bodies don't work without our internal, our microfauna that we carry around with us. You've probably heard that 9 out of 10 cells in your body are not your cells. They are the cells of other critters that have partnered up with you, which isn't to say that 9/10 of your mass is non-human. The human cells tend to be much larger, so most of your mass is you. And really, you could say all the other stuff in there is you as well. It's not all of it is, the building of all the things in your body is not encoded in your genome. And I've been thinking about this story. I mean, I haven't really been thinking much about the story because, it's an audiobook. I've mostly just been listening to the story and taking it in. But I've been thinking about how for over a decade, I didn't swear off science fiction. I mean, I was still indulging from time to time, but I had sort of sworn off the expectation that, the high-tech sorts of science fiction stories had anything to say about the future because, I had been listening to the peak oil folk who said that the future did not have anything to do with artificial intelligence or robotics or space travel or genetic engineering or nanotechnology, and it had a lot to do with farming, and possibly swordplay, horseback riding, blacksmithing. And lots of people have said this to me, which is funny because sometimes they'll say it in a scolding tone in response to a video in which I admitted, I don't know what the future holds. I don't know. I mean, I've heard people lay out a variety of plausible futures, and I doubt any of them are going to be exactly right. I'm sure the actual future will be shockingly mundane and will feel entirely, not special. But at the same time, it will include elements which seem obvious when we get there, but nobody predicted. Or if anybody did predict it, that prediction was buried in a bushel full of nonsensical predictions that didn't pan out. And in hindsight, it seems ridiculous that anybody ever thought they might pan out. But I like thinking about space travel. I like thinking about expanding the sphere of human operation. I like thinking about expanding the sphere of human intelligence beyond our biology. Whether that could actually happen, I don't know. But, I'm more than half done with my life, barring radical life extension. And I don't really see any great need to predict the future. I do see a need to make sense of the present in light of the past and in light of, existing trends, which we can extrapolate out a little bit. That seems, an important life skill, and also it's important for certain members of the society to focus on it a lot more than most people do. So that's kind of my self-appointed role. But for the most part, I just think about the stuff that I like to think about. And, this is my confession. Not that that's a particularly, egregious sin. I think most people think it is their God-given right. Oh, that's another thing about this book. On a ship of 2,000 people in 12 biomes, you can't live where you want. You can't go where you want. You can't reproduce when you want. Everybody is sterilized, and you have to get special permission to have a child. And then, your sterilization is undone temporarily, and you can, with the mate of your choice, have a child. But you can't move around freely. There's no money. It's an entrepreneur's hell. You can't start a business because it would be completely untenable on a closed system of that size for anybody to gain control over more resources than they need just for their own personal maintenance. Decisions about allocation of resources have to be made centrally by the ship's computer and by various technocratic commissions. That's just how it's got to be in that environment. And, one of the early themes is that the main character at age 14, she's allowed to go on what's called a wander, where she gets to go to all the different biomes and just, go from place to place and work different jobs and learn about the world in which she lives. And she She has no talent, for the technical stuff that her mother is so good at, but she's a good listener. And so she's kind of like me in that she sits down with people with a recorder running and she just asks them questions. And once they start talking, she kind of shuts up and lets the questions or let the answers flow out. And something people say again and again and again is that, we're not free. We're not free to move. We're not free to determine our fate. We're not free to, reproduce as we will. This really sucks. And yet everybody understands intellectually that given the situation that they're in, absolute freedom is just not in the cards. It's not tenable. And is there an application? I mean, is that an allegory for our world? I don't know. I'm kind of like Tolkien in that I dislike allegory wherever I detect it. I think he's more gentle about it. He says, I politely disregard it or something like that. I'll look up the quote, throw it up on screen. I noticed there's a couple different people in the comments who have Tolkien-esque names. Feanor and Melkor. Any other Tolkienites out there? Okay, this has kind of become an unstructured rant. All I really had in mind was to give you a bare bones account of the audiobook I've been listening to, and then my confession that I don't have any illusions that I'm predicting the future or that I'm doing anything really any more important than just keeping myself occupied and interested in life and maybe providing some entertainment and food for thought for a few folks out there in the world. All right, I will talk to you again tomorrow. Stay well.